Okay, let's go ahead and get going. Hello and welcome to Connect Spring. My name is Liana Salama and I am with the International Housewares Association, and this is our keynote presentation, The Now Normal, Creating Value Amid Chaos. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. The speaker will be taking questions at the end of the session. You can go ahead and use the Q&A function down at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit questions at any time during the session. And then at the end, once Tom is finished presenting, we will go ahead and go through those. Secondly, so you know, this session will be recorded and will be available on IHA's website within about 2 weeks of the full event conclusion, so roughly around mid-April. So before we get started here, I would like to go ahead and give our sponsor an opportunity to say a few words. I want to thank Gleaner for sponsoring today's session and give her a chance to give us a little preview of what she's got.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Evelyn Brune. I'm Sales Director here at Gleaner and a proud Gleaner gal. We are so excited to be part of the Now Normal segment today and looking forward to some mind-blowing insights from Tom later on. I'm actually joining you today from my Now Normal, aka my kids' playroom. Gleaner Inc. is the leading eco-minded fabric care company in the industry. It was founded by our president and CEO, Kim Cole, a mother, a fierce businesswoman, looking for better eco-minded products to care for her favorite clothing and home textiles. As you can see, we offer a wide range of best-selling, award-winning, and patented products that really make laundry day and wardrobe care so much more fun. And let me tell you, our products work. Now more than ever, consumers are caring about eco-friendly products and making those purchasing decisions. Our line of battery-free fabric shavers and biodegradable wool dryer balls scream sustainability. Hope you can tune in on Tuesday at 2 p.m. for my next live demo, and you might see
that was easy.
This guy again. Au revoir.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. That was great. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. Tom Mirabile is the founder and principal of Springboard Futures and the consumer trend analyst for the International Housewares Association. Tom's full bio is available on the Connect Spring website at theinspiredhomeshow.com/connect. Thanks, Tom. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Thanks, Liana, and thank you all for joining us today. This is a very exciting presentation, and I think that you'll really enjoy it. So again, we'll have questions at the end, and here we go. Let me share my screen with you. The idea behind the Now Normal was actually a pretty simple one. We're in a very chaotic period right now, and I think one of the things that we're all looking for is what really matters to the consumer, what creates value. So what we decided to do was, I think the first part of anything like this is, finding the right sort of mission. And what we decided to do was the objective overall is to really look across the landscape of what the consumer is wanting now in this sort of trans-pandemic period and finding what's creating value now. And then to create a vision of the consumers that is actionable, that whether you're a retailer or a manufacturer or just someone who studies consumers, brings all under one roof, so to speak, this a vision of this evolving consumer. Springboard decided to bring some partners in on this. You probably know some of them. The first is Leanne Schwarzkopf, principal and founder of Project Partners Network. She is amazing woman. Her agency provides marketplace intelligence and strategy for everyone from home and housewares people to fast-moving consumer goods. And then the other person we brought in was Pamela Danziger. Pam is a speaker, an author, market researcher. She has been internationally recognized for her expertise on the American consumer. So what we wanted to do was sort of look at an overarching question. What creates value right now? We looked across research from a lot of different people, and you'll be seeing those references throughout. But when we look at what consumers really care about, what is creating value for them, we came up with a total of 14 different points. We're not going to do all of those today. We're just going to do some of them, but we'll be adding to this as we go through the year. But the idea was to pull those apart and say, let's look at them from a consumer perspective and how can we recreate them as manufacturers and retailers. When we anchored that with a survey of over 1,000 consumers across the US. It was just recently completed at the end of March. We did a 70-30 female-male split, all primary purchasers of home and housewares categories product. So, and we anchored it in female because that's really where primary purchase decisions live, and in that ratio, more or less. It's also very well balanced by age, income, and geography. And if you want to contact us, we can give you the detailed data on that. So the first thing was to sort of look at how do we define value in an interpandemic marketplace. We found that it really works best to look at it in 3 silos. The first is shopping values. So, and that's really about why we buy. So what are the values that make us purchase? And we've identified these: price, convenience, shopping experience, and so forth. The next is corporate values, and that's who do we buy from? And how, what are the values that the companies that we buy from, the brands that we buy from, deliver to us? What do we expect from them? You can see those here. And then finally, the product values. What do we buy? So when we look at what we buy, what are the real drivers behind that decision to make that purchase? And we looked at today's top 5 drivers in that area. So let's start off with shopping values. Why do you buy something? The first and most obvious is probably price. We define this as, better prices. It doesn't necessarily mean that something's on sale. It's whether the price seems like it delivers a great value. That has been an ongoing, issue, especially because right now consumers, a lot of the realities of the pandemic, not knowing how long it's going to last and not knowing, when businesses will be open again, all of those things have triggered value-based behaviors. So consumers are looking at, especially in home and housewares categories, they're looking at price points that maybe they haven't looked at before. Now that we're heading into the beginning of the second year of this, you'll notice that we're referring to interpandemic a lot. I don't want to say post-pandemic, because even when it's over, the effects of it are longer lasting. But we are noticing now that there is less price point resistance. That was reported this week's sessions by NPD. We're noticing some relaxed price resistance for a lot of different reasons, not because people perceive the pandemic is going away, but because they're seeing that they're going to be using home products more and they're making a larger investment in them. We wanted to also put in some really important study results. MIT Sloan has done a great job of looking at consumers and to understand that there has been a significant decrease in consumers planning to spend in discretionary categories. That's carried into this year. And then on these large charts, you're seeing the Springboard survey. So not unexpectedly, 99% of consumers say that price is important. 65% of consumers rate it as very extremely important. So it comes up in the top 3 of what consumers are looking for. It's also important to understand that the fact that we're seeing some flexibility, if you look here, you're seeing that somewhat important is still fully 1/3 of these people, which means it's telling us that price isn't everything, that if the right elements of value are in there, consumers are going to flex on price. And we're definitely seeing that happen right now in the market. A lot of us have been looking at consumer-centric approaches to our business, again, retailers, manufacturers. And one of the things that really identifies a consumer-centric approach is that it's tethered to a real understanding of how consumers live, how they live, how they want to live, and what they're dealing with. So that is what we tried to work this whole survey around, identifying some of those things. It's also important, we all sit in chairs and think about, okay, well, what values does this offer? And we're looking at margin and markup and all of these sort of business side concerns, but just understand that consumers, their evaluations are constant. And a lot of times they're not even thinking about it. So it's important that before that product hits the aisle or hits the floor, we really think about are the values that we're offering visible? Are they clearly understood and rapidly? Also, I think the big message here is the value equation used to be about tangibles, and they're still important. So, materials, technology, all of those, but now intangibles make up as much as half, probably more of the value equation. They're definitely at the top of the things we're going to look at today. So intangibles, selling things like enjoyment, experience, trust, that type of thing. So it's very important to consider intangibles, and we've tried to draw those into the value equation. One intangible, to a degree, is convenience. So when we ask respondents in our survey how to vote on convenience, we identified or defined it as simple purchasing, a lot of products available immediately, very easy options for payment, delivery, pickup, returns, whatever you would want in a store or online. All of those are part of what the consumer considers convenience. During this pandemic, convenience was extremely important. It became essential because we're housebound. So when we want something, there aren't a lot of other distractions. We want it now, and that idea of availability becomes important. National Retail Federation pointed this number out. When you consider how many consumers backed out of a purchase just because it was inconvenient, it's really striking. Also, the number one reasons why consumers shopped at a new retailer, a new store, a new website during the pandemic was that it was convenient for them, or they found product conveniently. When we look at the Springboard survey, what we see here is, again, in every generation, over 60% ranked convenience is very extremely important. And when you look at it, something cross-generational like that, it's always a marker of importance. We also put in here McKinsey's 2020 survey because we thought it was interesting to see that when it comes to why people tried new brands, you're looking at 48% of people tried new brands just because it was available. And in this case, just because it was in stock where they were shopping at the moment. So again, price here comes in number 3 on this McKinsey study. So we're looking at what really affects people is I want it now. And a lot of times I need it now. The silver lining to all of this is that consumers are trying new brands because either the brand that they have is out of stock, or their sense of urgency is elevated because, again, they're in a sort of fight or flight type of situation. And because of that, agility becomes extremely important. Immediate availability is the key right now to, again, what convenience is. And the best way to approach it is to really make sure that you're not compromising how you're fulfilling what consumers want by, hanging on to a promotion even a few days longer just because it's what's on the calendar, making sure your stock levels are there. And also, it's a great opportunity to promote private label and own brand programs. There's been amazing growth in those areas. The next value element is shopping experience, and we defined it as simplicity in online purchasing, multiple shipping, delivery, pickup, returns. The experience is easy. It is, and it also goes beyond that into stellar customer service, which can be defined in a lot of different ways. But at the end of the day, consumers really want a very sort of harmonized experience. Whether you're talking online, in-store, those experiences need to be differentiated, but speak to each other beautifully. And Target does a terrific job of that. You can find 300 rugs online, but it's when you're in store, it's a very focused assortment. So it's separate, but very compatible with one another. And again, understanding Bond Loyalty Report is a terrific report. I encourage you all to view it, but brand engagement is driven by experience. One of the things that we also see is that millennials are particularly, I don't want to say fickle. Let's just say they're not quite as loyal. So when convenience or experience steps into the room, millennials tend to go towards what feels best. So if they want contactless payment, to choose a different store just because you have contactless payment is pretty impressive. In the Springboard survey, one of the things that we noticed was that the that experience was very or extremely important to 42% of millennials, but only 19% of boomers. So it's notable because what that really means, what that tells us, is that boomers don't expect as much experience. Their experience is more in ownership, and the and shopping experience is self-created. Online shopping for boomers is still something where they see it as transactional, and millennials and Gen Z also see it very much as an experience. The experience is online. It's not just something that you have to go to a store to experience something. We're moving to corporate values, and that's where do you buy. So when we look at what are the most important parts of the value equation when it comes to where we buy, trust is very important. And we define it as credibility, reliability, authenticity. It's a lot of times very hard to pin down trust. It's a part of trust elevation is because consumers are much more aware of social, environmental, political impact of their purchases. We expect brands to be transparent about their position on socioeconomic issues, on political issues, but moreover, we are now in a position as trans-pandemic consumers where we are depending on brand trust for a lot of things. If you advertise it, it's going to show up in my house. A lot of times I don't have the opportunity to see it, to touch it. The Edelman Trust Survey is an amazing resource, and you can see their name up here, and we can put you in touch with the people. But it was striking that PricewaterhouseCoopers identified 95% of Americans saying they wish that there are more companies that they could trust with their data. That's a huge gap. And whether you're a manufacturer or a retailer, anybody who has a direct-to-consumer application should be aware of that, because it's going to be a real market differentiator very quickly. A book that I had read called The Trusted Advisor, it was written by David Maister, and who is a Harvard professor, and it's been something that's been sort of ticking back in my brain for the last couple of years. I love this book. It was actually written for consultants. It was written for particularly seemed to be focused on financial consultants, but the idea behind it was sort of defining what creates trust. And they came up with actually a mathematical equation. So trust equals credibility and reliability, blah, blah. It's a little bit hard to look at. We kind of looked at that and took it apart and looked at it a different way. So if we pull apart the 4 components of trust, there's reliability, which is your reputation. Can I rely on you as a consumer? And are you a reliable company in every aspect? Credibility. Do you have the credentials to deliver, whether it's technology? If I'm buying technology from you, do you have a history of honesty? Do you have a history of doing things right? Intimacy. This is becoming more and more important. Intimacy, think of it like empathy. Are you sincere? Do you see me as a human being and not just as a number? And as we're isolated, that becomes more and more important, especially because the pandemic has been a singular experience. We have all experienced it together. So you go to somebody in a store, you call customer service, you expect them to understand what you're going through, because they're going through it too. So it's put a real onus of understanding on manufacturers and suppliers and brands. And then finally, self-orientation, which means, who are you focused on? Is the brand focused on me, or are they just focused on themselves? Where's the direction of their attention? Where's the direction of their purpose? And when you put all of those together, the intersection of those is trust and the yield of that. So when we define trust and we ask consumers, when it comes to home and housewares, how important is trust? 82% said it was very extremely important. That's a huge number. To roll that up, it outstrips price by over 20 percentage points. And because of that, we can expect brands, and we're already seeing it, to start transforming themselves and understanding that trust and loyalty are important value drivers for consumers. The next is product assortment. So of course, we look at people and say, well, I want to buy from somebody who has a good assortment. they have an assortment, but it's edited. We've all seen retailers who don't edit their assortments well. It's like walking into a morass of choices with no guidance. So it's a combination of great choice and also editing and creating a personality rather than just being somebody who has everything. The Also, it's important to have that that assortment challenges be addressed, because the pandemic has created a lot of sort of regional needs in product assortment, and those, because we're all sort of addressing the pandemic at different rates and in different ways, it's important to keep regional assortments sort of locked down. So the idea in an IBM survey that to see this number so high on people who want an assortment that fits their lifestyles tells us that you have to have a point of view. You can't just be talking to me and just throwing everything at me. It's great also to see, and this is a great argument for brick and mortar. Again, same IBM survey, 82% purchase additional items when they enter a store to pick up online purchases. So one does, there was a sort of myth that, oh, well, if you're purchasing online, then you're not buying anything additional. And I think that this is a great way to show that that's not actually the case. And as pandemic restrictions ease up, this is where agility really becomes important, because it's important that, since we're seeing one state to the next, different levels of restriction easement and things like that, we have to make sure that the assortment speaks into that. So when we look at our survey and how important is product assortment, again, 60% said product assortment was extremely important across different channels. I loved what Kate Nightingale of Style Psychology had to say. Having choices gives the consumer a restored sense of control. This was true before the pandemic, but now it's even more true, because again, we're isolated. We don't get to go into stores, and we're being bombarded online with a lot of different options. So when we look at this overall, I wanted to bring this McKinsey piece in because it's so encouraging. And I think it's easy to look at the dark side of the pandemic, but one of the really encouraging things is to see how many consumers tried new shopping behaviors. And when we say new shopping behaviors, it's a new shopping method, trying a different brand, different retailers, stores, or website, trying private label, all of those things that under normal circumstances we sort of eke out, single digit percentages of growth. 75% of consumers tried a new shopping behavior during the pandemic. And more impressive is the intent to continue on the far right. So you've got, on average, about 75% of people saying that if they tried a private label or store brand, they're going to continue with it. That's amazing. So there's never been a better time for us to get people new brands, own brands, private label, and opening price points, as well as, really speaks to the ability to move different price points into all categories of consumers. 2020 was a landslide of social responsibility concern, diversity and inclusion, human rights, and just the expectation that the company that you're dealing with is going to behave ethically and responsibly. It's, you've all read so much about it that it's probably not important to go into the minutia of it, but at the core of it is transparency, because I always say, be transparent before you're made transparent. Make sure that your employees in particular know where you stand and that you are supportive. Again, this Edelman Trust survey brought out the fact that a lot of people really believe that brands should speak out against systemic racism, speaking out against it, and not just acting on it inside their own house, but actually speaking about it. Consumers feel more empowered to share their opinions about companies. And when they want to find out what a company's position is, they go to social media. So they don't go to the company's website, because as a whole, we don't trust what companies say about themselves as much as we trust what other consumers say about companies. And most importantly, a huge number of people believe that speaking out on social media gets companies to change their behavior, and they're right. So make sure that you're aware of what's being said and being asked. on social media about your brand and its positions on social responsibility. So it's a kind of gloppy to look at on the left, but while all brands consider social responsibility important, there is a sort of lag with older generations. So, and this is just looking at those who voted very extremely important. So we see the Gen Z, 54% said that it's very extremely important. And we see that sort of sloughing off as we get older. Boomers, 44%. And it's not, I don't want the read here to be that boomers don't believe in social responsibility. It's just boomers are less likely to believe that their politics should be involved in the products that they buy. They don't see that as much of a lever as younger generations. That said, consumers we saw something this year, corporate cancel culture, and it is extremely important because it's rapid and it can be devastating. Look at what happened with Goya, Wells Fargo, L'Oreal as recent examples where consumers just said, no, you're not holding up to your promise and you don't have my best interests at heart and you don't know who I am. So you can take a look at those online. I won't go into a lot of detail about it. But when we talk about cancel culture, I want you to see the things that, this was Porter Novelli's Business of Cancel Culture study. Again, a great report. When we look at the things that trigger that trigger consumers to cancel. Racial justice, number one. Women's rights, COVID-19 protocols, and the establishment or violation of that. Immigration, climate change, LGBTQ. So it's just important to know where you stand on these, to make sure your employees know where you stand on those, because they are at the core of what's being focused on for corporate cultures. And then finally, in this section, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a great study. And one of the things that really came out of it that struck me was that 68% of business leaders believe companies today are committed to an economy that serves all citizens and not just the business stakeholders. But only 15% of consumers agree with that. So either their consumers are correct or we're correct, but regardless of who's correct, the rift there in perception is incredibly important because people decide whether or not to buy from you based on their perception of whether or not you have their interests at heart. And then, of course, environmental responsibility, another important topic. The demand for transparency has never been higher, and it's not just about being transparent about what your issues are. It's important that consumers see that you're trying to do something to ameliorate the problems that you're causing. Even if all you can do is carbon credits, they expect you to do something. Greenprint just this month came out with a Business of Sustainability Index. It's their first. It was brilliant. And some of the sort of top line understandings was that consumers will pay more for sustainable products. A stat that you're not seeing here is that the majority of them don't know how to find them. A high number, almost 80%, said that they're more likely to purchase a product that's clearly labeled as environmentally friendly. That said, 53% of them say that they don't even believe that, or they only believe that part of the time, like never or only sometimes they believe that. But still, they're going to buy a product that says that it's environmentally friendly over one that doesn't say anything about it. The most important thing to trust in environmentally responsible claims is third-party validation. There are a lot of resources that do it, and there's some new solutions happening right now, which I'll talk to you about in a second. So how important was that in our national survey for home and housewares? Again, broad cross-generational support. But again, we start seeing this disparity between generations about whether or not environmental responsibility affects their choice of a brand. I will say this. The Gen Z has moved up from a couple of years ago. It was about 86%. Now you're at 94%. And boomers were only in the high 50s, and now they're up at 88%. So while there still is a disparity between generations and their commitment to make this a part of their decision, you're still seeing a very large number of people who do make it a consideration, and boomers are creeping up there. And making up some of that space. And then finally, we look at corporate values. So we looked at corporate values. Where do you buy? And finally, we're going to look at product values. What do you buy? So the actual products themselves, what are they delivering? one of our focuses last year was space savings, and it was extremely important then. Now it's, and you can see some of this in the IHA sessions, Market Watch sessions as well, but the idea that that products should save space, nest, store easily, things like that, that is definitely something that's ongoing. I know there's a lot of talk about people moving to the suburbs, and while that is true, and it will continue to be true, younger people, are still going to be living in the cities. The cities are going to become, according to Malcolm Gladwell, a real youth hub and less expensive, and space will always be a consideration for that type of prime real estate. The home has become a lifestyle hub. And that means that right now, it's got to be a family space in the morning. It's got to be a workplace midday, a classroom in the afternoon, a social space late afternoon, and at some point during the day, a sanctuary, or in many cases right now, a real fortress of health and wellness, so to speak. So, and since we don't know how long the pandemic is going to last, we're still living with that awareness, and we can expect consumers to live with that awareness. Even if the pandemic abated tomorrow, at the forefront of our minds is going to be, is that going to happen again? And that's why people are making changes to their homes and the way their homes look. We're seeing it in kitchen renovations, as well as the National Builders Association all showed that there were a lot of kitchen renovations happening. And an important thing here is decluttering. Decluttering is a part of what we talk about when we talk about the space saving trend. The idea of work from home is probably the single largest influencer of these types of purchases. And the fact that that is definitely, if everything goes back to normal tomorrow, after this amount of time, we've gotten used to working at home, and a lot of consumers are going to be thinking that way. 90% of consumers said space savings was an important part of the value equation for them. And again, keep in mind that storage and org, very important to this movement. People say that decluttering is a great way to relax, a great way to bring more ease into your daily interactions, especially when we've got more people in the house. The other thing that we look at is quality. So when we say quality, there's a lot of different definitions of it. We defined it as reliable performance, safety, durability. These are the words that we keep seeing coming up across the landscape of data when consumers are asked what they feel about quality. For us, it is probably the most important element of the value equation, because quality influences other things the same way price does. Quality has a halo effect on brand reputation, elevates price, and it actually helps ensure subsequent purchases. And most of all, it's a tremendous marketing benefit because people talk about it when it's right. IBM and the National Retail Federation, their top 3 purchase drivers, quality was number 1. And when we look at online shoppers, over a third say that quality is more important than customer service. So when we look at the Springboard survey, and that's just when we're talking about home and housewares, quality is absolutely by far and away the number 1 value element for this study. 94% of consumers said it was very to extremely important. 94%, I mean, you can look at the numbers, but now compare that to convenience, where very important was only 65%, price was 66%, trust was 76%. So when you look at these top four in comparison, it's clear that quality stands out in front. I've worked with a lot of organizations who talk about quality and talk about making it a mandate. And we're focused on quality. It has to be a top-down mandate. It can't start with product development. It can't start with sales. It's got to be a North Star, really. Let's look at quality in terms of generations, okay, and their attitudes towards quality. There are some shifts here. One of them is that, we're seeing a rise across generations, and one of the reasons is that durability is a big part of quality. And as we're at home, or even when we're not at home, we're going to be cooking at home more. We've been cooking at home more. So things need to be more durable. For younger generations, this idea of the rejection of disposable culture in particular is a real purchase driver. It's unsustainable, it's irresponsible. And finally, the performance that delivers professional results, especially in home and housewares. We're replacing the restaurant experience. We're replacing external experiences. So we want restaurant quality, bakery quality, things like that. What's interesting is that there's an 18-point variance between Gen Z and boomers. And what it really means is that it's not that Gen Z doesn't think the quality is important. It's a matter of affordability. So while boomers have the highest amount of discretionary income, naturally Gen Z has the lowest. And it's important to point out at this point that for this survey, when we say Gen Z, Gen Z goes up through, basically we took the last portion of it. So we took of Gen Z the 18 and up. So it's just important to know that because we don't, we wanted to make sure that we took the portion of that segment that was actually spending money as well as influencing. And finally, user experience. User experience has become important and it's probably the biggest intangible. But when we think about it, look at it this way: as important as social media is, this is the part of the value equation that speaks to that. Are we giving products that help people create unique, social, shareable experiences? When we can't go to restaurants and share pictures of our food and the things that we're eating and the things that we're ordering and the new experiences we're having, we share the experiences in home. So products that enable us to identify ourselves, to sort of share our personality, our likes, our dislikes, our achievements around things that happen in the home, our new products, what are our brags, all of those really speak to self-expression. And it's a very important part of the, where the consumer lives right now is what's the experience. It's emotion. So it's also about skill enhancement as much as it is self-expression. Both IBM and Edelman showed that there was a marked decrease in the importance of buying brands that communicate success. The New York Times also reported on it. The reason for that is, look, you're looking at me from, the chest up. And so, you're not seeing a lot of the visual cues that you do that I might normally be, carrying or buying to impress people. Now I'm buying more to change my life, so to speak. Also, again, this, Forbes did a study, and it was interesting to see how willing people are to try a new brand if they feel it's going to deliver social, emotional, identity, all these functional benefits, rather than just something that they heard about, but they're tying their purchases to emotion. So in the Springboard survey, 50% of purchasers said that user experience was very to extremely important. It's probably around our fourth or fifth. And again, generations are differing. So when we look at Gen Z, 62% said the the user experience was very extremely important. Boomers, 50%. A lot of this is kind of attributed to the fact that, boomers know what they're buying when they're buying it, and their social media engagement is somewhat lower. The idea of a of a user experience, a lot of it, they know when they buy it what they're in for, and they're sort of more thinking about it in advance. Ask yourself how you can help consumers grow their experience, how we can help them express themselves through product. Again, I've given you a link here to the Edelman sites, which you'll be able to get as we move forward. And just, we just sort of wanted to run by you. You'll notice that some of these we talked about today, some of them we didn't, and we're hoping you'll stay in touch with us. Innovative features and benefits was a really interesting piece of it. Customer reviews was an amazing part of the survey, but, we wanted to keep you coming back, and we want to give you some other things to think about. So we'll be sharing that as we go forward. Thank you so much, Liana. I'm going to stop my share now, and we'll give this whole thing back to you.
Thanks so much, Tom. Sorry, I'm just waiting for my video to come back on there. Hello. Okay, excellent presentation. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions that I'm going to try and go through. I'm going to try and group some things together here. But let's start kind of, towards the end of the presentation with the conversation about quality. So a couple questions of, what's meant by product quality? Is it just durability, or are there other attributes that make up the concept of quality to the consumer?
I think that there's, I think that quality is primarily, it's primarily durability. Right now, I think that that's super important. I think a lot of consumers and we were seeing it online. A lot of people were complaining about how things were just falling apart in the kitchen because they were using them too much. Also, the rug industry, the furniture industry, people were just, they were using things a lot more than they were used to, and they just weren't holding up. So also you have kids using them more too. So quality plays a role there as well. When you've got kids like sort of playing with things all day,
yeah.
Well, you know about that.
I know the words of that song, yeah.
But I think also there's, in an overarching way, when we as consumers are housebound, so to speak, when we're spending more time with things, we saw it in 2008 with the last time we had a recession, when people had to cook at home more, cookware sales went up. And people upgraded because they were like, I'm using this all the time. I deserve, I'm stuck at home. I have to make meals at home. I may as well enjoy it. I may as well. And social media is layering on the importance of that because we're showing what we make. We want restaurant quality. We want, bakery quality. We want to share it.
That actually dovetails nicely into another question that we got. I'll come back to quality in just a second. But related to eating out of home and the amount of in-home eating and cooking and everything else we've been doing, what are your thoughts about, post-COVID, what, will consumers still be eating at home in that kind of, with that kind of intensity? Or do you think that people are going to be going out more to compensate for the COVID lockdown? Now, I have an opinion, but I want to give this to you.
Yeah, I definitely have an opinion on it. Look, we're economically challenged right now. And if we're not challenged, we're concerned, as we should be. The economy is not completely stable right now. And the restaurant experience that we're going to encounter is not the restaurant experience that we left. Even when restaurants get back to capacities, they're not going to be at capacity for months. They're not staffed as fully, so they're not offering the type of. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all about, I want to go back to restaurants as soon as I can, but the bottom line is to be sensible. We're not going to do it all the time. Also, we've learned how to do things. We've learned how to cook. We're going to want to do that. Yes, right now, talking about a lot of fatigue. Yes, I'm sick of it. But bottom line is, we've learned how to do things, and this is where the big risk is not restaurants. The big risk is food delivery, Grubhub, Uber Eats. And there's a reason for that, because right now consumers have figured out during the pandemic that unfortunately there's a huge delivery charge, but they can have a whole bunch of different food, have a whole lot. It delivers time, it delivers convenience. It's literally brought to your door. It's too expensive, but once that industry, and it's a huge industry, figures out how to conquer the margin issues associated with just giving away delivery, right, we're in trouble. So our industry has to be concentrating on how do we make preparation easier, faster, how do we make it healthier, all the things that make you want to make food at home. How do we enable that?
Yeah. I think, from my perspective, and I look at some of the numbers coming out of the National Restaurant Association, there's certainly an expectation that there will be a surge, that there's a pent-up demand, that at some point there will be a surge in restaurant, and going out to eat at restaurants. But it's not, I don't know that it's sustainable. I think there's kind of this initial, Joe talked about it yesterday in terms of an itch that you need to scratch. So you get out there and you scratch that itch, but then you eventually level out to whatever the new normal is. As you said, it'll take us a while to get there.
It's going to be a huge travel surge too, but I'm not moving to Paris.
Right.
We're going to be treating ourselves to eating out at first, and that's going to be the treat.
Yeah, and certainly, as you mentioned, the economy will have something to do with that, right? If more women are out of the workforce, we talked about 2 million have exited in the past year. Exited, not lost their jobs. They've exited the workforce. So that has both economic impact as well as just amount of time that you're at home that you have time.
And there's a psychological impact to that too, Liana, and I'm sure you're aware of it. But it's like unfortunately, and Pew Research just did a brilliant piece on it, but the expectation when a female is in the house is that she's going to cook.
Right.
And there's this huge disparity. They were studying about if you ask the average household, the female head of household, what percentage of the work she does that, and you ask the guy what percentage of the work he does, it like adds up to 140%, so it's like, there's this like this miss there, but that too is going to be, if you've got, it's sort of like if you've got a washing machine, how can you justify sending out to wash and fold? You know what I mean?
That's
It's
right.
like,
Yeah. Okay, going back to quality very quickly. So you had talked a little bit about the, let me see what it's called here, the price quality relationship, and how you balance those two things. I think just in the interest of, giving some color to that, are there any examples of really good price quality balances that you see out there right now? And I know that's a little on the spot
well,
question. I apologize.
I don't mind the on the spot. I just get, it's the calls you get after, like, why didn't you think of us? But I think that it's interesting. We're going back to some standards that you hear people talking about that they haven't been talking about in a while, like with cookware. People are talking about weight again when they talk about quality. With flatware, I mean, that's like a 1980s sensibility. You see somebody pick up a fork,
Yeah.
ooh, quality. It's like, what? So we're really looking to, it's that sort of reaching back. What did quality mean? I think that it's finished sometimes. There's so much OPP out there. So, we just want to, quality is just super important. I just, I was talking to Leanne Schwarzkopf and Pam Danziger this morning, and we were just blown away by the results of how important quality was. I mean, it's insane that it jumped that far ahead. And that's for our industry. It still balances out with other industries, but to see in our industry quality matter so much, it tells you that we're spending more time with the products we use here.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it is a little bit of what you talked about in the beginning, which is about, you kind of, the consumer knows it when they see it, right? You mentioned watching the consumer and a reaction to something in an aisle or in, that maybe, is a little out of whack. The consumer knows it when they see it. It might not be that,
Nordic ware. Okay, here's an example. You look at a Nordic ware pan and you pick that up and you're like, this is quality shit. I mean, it's like amazing. It's heavy. It's got tons of detail. The finish is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The attributes of care. Also when we talk about time, we're talking about easy care. Make it. Whoever invents the dishes that wash themselves has me for life. I mean, it's like you have to think about every stage of, not just the consumer's path to purchase, but the consumer's path of experience. What do they do when they leave the store? It's super important.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to jump over to some of the conversation around sustainability and other, types of social responsibility. And one of the things that was noted was the importance. I can't remember. I took a couple screenshots here, but the 44% of folks who started using a new brand because of that brand's response to COVID-19. What
Mm-hmm.
kind of response to COVID-19 specifically, do you think they're referring to?
I think, quite honestly, that's addressing retail and retail habits more. Are the aisles wider? Do you have gloves if I want them, masks if I forgot them, hand sanitizer in every aisle? Are you putting stickers on the floor that don't just tell me, but tell all those people around me to stay 6 feet away? That type of thing. And, when we see, you and I have both looked at the numbers on resisting going back to retail. This is not going to be easy. We're going to have to make people feel comfortable. And it's, the absolute wrong thing to do right now is to make people feel like, oh yeah, it's fine. We're safe. We're good. It's almost over. Everybody's gotten vaccinated. Safe is so much safer, and it's so much smarter. But I think that, that you look at people like, I believe it's WMF. Is it WMF? I think so. They came out with a flatware that's embedded with an antimicrobial nanotechnology.
Yeah.
So it's primarily it was brought out to address restaurants, but it will self-sanitize, food on it or not. It will self-sanitize in something ridiculous like 90 minutes. And is it 60% more expensive? Yeah. But you know what? At a
But how
certain
much is your health worth, right? In this day and
economy of
age.
scale is going to make that happen. Triton, which we all take for granted right now, there was a point where Triton was ridiculously expensive, but the fact that BPA became an issue and everybody wanted to use it made it affordable. So
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I just want to put a quick note. You had mentioned the diversity and inclusion session. I just want to make a note that's at 12:30 today in about just under an hour. And for those folks who are thinking about a diversity and inclusion strategy, whether it's internally, whether it's as part of their how they staff, how they manage, or how they're active in the marketplace. It's going to be a great session. It's very agnostic, pragmatic. It's not agenda driven, but it's really about how do you figure out what the right approach to D&I is for your organization, and then get there. It's not a one size.
It's a toolbox. That's what I've seen it. And I really liked it. It's
yeah.
Great.
Just a couple more. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The material connection session. I can't tell you. It's so cool. And Liana and I and Peter Giannetti are working with Material Connection to do some ongoing work to bring you new materials throughout the year. But very exciting. It's really cool.
And that's a next week. I think that's next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Couple other notes here related to trying new brands. So you mentioned here that, the top reason for trying, there's all of this openness to trying new brands. And the top reason at 32% for, why did you try a new brand was because was willingness to try a new brand. Is there anything? Okay. Is there anything specific about the brands themselves that inclines someone, if someone's out there in the market and they say, I'm willing to try a new brand, are there certain attributes or anything that steer them towards one brand versus another?
Well, visuals are definitely important. We talked about that a little bit in packaging, but also just, right now it's about being bold. And this is not a political statement, but if you saw the inauguration, it wasn't a matter of being political. It was just a matter of, you saw it and it was like, man, this has changed. Look at all those colors, and you didn't realize you weren't seeing color a lot until you saw it. And then it was like, bam, that's their messaging, but like it or not, but that's one of the things that what grabs people. Visuals will always grab people first. That whatever your generation is, and it's important to remember that I don't want to say brand loyalty is dead, but it's under question. And the best companies in the world. Apple is as good as the next product they're going to do. It's everybody. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard because somebody's going to do it for us. So,
Well, and I think it puts it puts a little bow on the concept of branding and brand story being just as important as anything else, right? And how you stand out and differentiate.
I thought the interesting thing about people buying new brands and trying new retailers was that the number one reason was a lack of availability of what they had originally wanted. And it's like, it just goes to show you, and a part of that is also driven by the fact that we don't want to go to 10 different stores,
right.
I'm going to go to one store and get as many things as I can. But, it's great that it's not like, I'm just going to go home and get it online,
Yeah. So back to the notion of kind of trust with social media and news, with all of the, we've just lived through it, 4 years of fake news and, and certainly social media has taken its share of hits for, reinforcing ideas and not offering new ones. How do consumers, how do you trust reviews? What are the trustworthy sources out there that consumers can turn to really understand what's going on?
Well, it's interesting. I'm kind of surprised that we didn't hit it, but I know why. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So believe it or not, as thorough as this is, it only represents about maybe 60% of the value equations that we looked at. So we're going to be delivering that to everybody over the course of the next few months. You and I and Peter will be pushing that out. But one of them is reviews. We had consumers review whether they were expert reviews, whether they were blogger/influencer reviews, and yes, I did use air quotes, or whether they were other consumer reviews. By and large, 97% of consumers trust other consumers more than they trust anybody else by a wide margin.
That's so interesting, especially because there's a lot of pushback on some things, right? People go on Amazon and you're like, is that a real review? Is that a fake review? It's that's good insight. That's great. Related to the value, going back to the value equation, sorry to be jumping around. We've got some questions coming in on the fly here. On the value equation, when you think about subscription services, how do those factor into the value equation?
You know, it's funny, subscription services, especially in food, we're flagging a bit just before the pandemic. And it's not the ease of it that that brought it back, or that gave it a push, because frankly, we can get food from a lot of places. It just brings joy. When you look at subscription services as a whole, BarkBox, I'm not kidding. BarkBox comes in the door and my two greyhounds go ballistic.
Yeah.
And they just go nuts. And it's so much joy for me to see them have fun. When they're toy subscriptions, they're cosmetic subscriptions. It's like this idea of, it's like getting letters again.
Yeah.
I can't think of the last time. But that, bringing joy is, plus you get a trial. Even people like I think it's Boxed. We get some stuff from Boxed, it's like could be anything, like granola bars or whatever. And in the box, they always put a couple of things that you've never tried before. They just want you to try. It's vendor funded, I'm sure, or actually, they probably charge vendors for it, but it's just so much joy to look, well, what we get for free this month.
So last thing I want to cover here is just related to some of the shift, at least that's happened over the last year, to online. A couple questions. I'm gonna try and figure out how to combine them here. One related to approximately how many more boomers, whether it's a percentage or a raw number, adopted online in this past year. And then when we talk about things like quality, and we're talking about, oh, the heft of this or the packaging of that, how does that translate to an online experience on identifying quality?
Well, for the first thing, boomers, 36.28%. Of course, I don't know that. So I will look it up and we'll get that back. We will get that to you. Find out whoever asked it, and we will get that information to them. But I think that when we look at quality in an online environment, a lot of times people are still experiencing something in store. Especially in our categories, they want, cookware. You want to feel it, and then you go home and you hunt for the best deal. So it creates sort of a the omni-channel is about the shopping experience as much as it is about the buying experience. So, but I think that this is honestly where experts on YouTube come in, and you look on YouTube and you watch people rating it who do housewares. I hated to see bloggers move to influencers, because bloggers were generally expert in a field. You'd have gourmet bloggers who were talking about cookware all the time. Now a lot of influencers, you're talking about hand lotion in the morning and cookware at dinner time. So it's just it's a lot more fragmented. But the other thing is content. You look at some of the people. If you don't have the finances to generate your own content, partner with somebody, partner with a restaurant, partner with somebody, because content is king. We are selling people things that last a good long time. So how do we keep them engaged? How do we tell them new ways to use it and things like that? And I think some cookware companies are doing a great job of that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we are out of time. So that wraps up our Q&A and concludes our keynote, The Now Normal, Creating Value Amid Chaos. I want to thank Tom for his insights, and Gleaner and Evelyn for their sponsorship, as well as everyone here for attending. As mentioned earlier, these sessions will be posted on IHA's website in mid-April. And thanks for your participation. We hope to see you all at additional Connect Spring sessions over the next several days. Take care.
Thanks, Liana.